In the world of Led Zeppelin's official live album releases, there seems to be a growing rivalry in popularity between The Song Remains the Same and BBC Sessions, yet always lurking in the back, a somewhat unsung hero, despite capturing the band at one of its many peaks. A live album that struggles to find its place among Zeppelin fans to this day. Ever since its release, both its strengths and weaknesses were hard to ignore, but it was a sonic revelation. A ferocious set packed with violent riffs, punches, and monumental statements by a four-piece band, the Kings of the 70s. It was April 2003. My Zeppelin collection by then was the first 5 albums, the Latter Days compilation, The Song Remains the Same VHS, and BBC Sessions. The only live references I had were 1969, 1971, and 1973. Pages 2, 3, and 4 of the Latter Days booklet were my only clue into the strange and lost year of 1972. I didn't know Bootlegs existed, so those pictures were all I had. The UK tour, recording at Stargroves, and Bonzo at the Hyatt Hotel Los Angeles. But everything changed on an April evening at my house. A brand new live release became the only photographs I needed from this time period. Like I mentioned on my Houses of the Holy series, a local radio station hosted a midnight premiere promoting Led Zeppelin's newest addition to their catalog. They played some 80% of the record with no advertisements nor much DJ banner in between. Because the soon-to-be released Zeppelin DVD and CD sets were expensive, this was my only chance, so I got myself some 90-minute cassette tapes and hit the record button. Headphones on, I air guitared my way through their massive set. Every track hit me like a brick wall collection of bricks, walls and more bricks. Where I heard record collectors tell me Zeppelin didn't have a Made in Japan or Live at Leeds, this new album felt like a long-awaited response to that statement. Unfortunately, there were some problems with it. Unlike the other live stuff I knew, Robert Plant's high-pitched vocals sounded different. It wasn't BBC Sessions 1971, nor the raspy tones of The Song Remains the Same. It felt like the last days of Robert's organic high voice, with warning signs of cracking and a strange case of screeching. Now, I'll be honest, my ears got tired after 40 minutes of listening to this thing, never mind 2 hours. I loved the music, but I had ear fatigue, as if I listened to 3 Slayer albums back to back. It's no wonder the acoustic set was very much welcomed in between. I wrote down my favorite tracks, and the one that stood out the most was Immigrant Song. That version became my go-to version. Second favorite? Moby Dick, all 19 minutes of it. This ear fatigue thing compromised my first impressions of the other hard rock numbers, where I preferred the other releases that never bothered me like this. My subsequent record store visits as a teenager made me realize there seemed to be a troubled marketing campaign for the album. The DVD stole the CD's thunder. Many customers and employees were confused, or should I say dazed and confused, pun superintended, thinking the 3 CD set was a DVD soundtrack version, very much in the style of The Song Remains the Same. The album's long title didn't help either. It felt like a riddle. Repeating the name several times sounded like a John Bonham drum solo. I witnessed Spanish-speaking record salesmen trying to pronounce it as How the West Was Won. The previous live releases were easier for them, El Song Remains and BBC Sessions. I managed to get both CD and DVD sets past high school with one of my first office paychecks. The DVD got most of my attention, of course, but the CD set was my driving soundtrack, playing my favorite cuts and dangerously switching CDs with my left hand on the wheel. I always played it at max volume, but that always proved to be a bittersweet experience, as I tried to overlook the fact this record was a casualty of the famous loudness wars, where sound waves were pushed to the limit to stand out in the market. How the West Was Won was like a powerful drug, with the risk of a sonic overdose if you weren't careful. I slowly walked away from it, only coming back for Immigrant Song, Moby Dick, and Bring It On Home. That was until the 2018 remaster came along. I was let down by the fact that it had no bonus material, and even some minutes cut from the original release, but there was a very special prize inside. I held back my purchase intent for over a year, and then I got it after reading the reviews. I couldn't believe it. The sound was now perfect. You could crank up the speakers without ear fatigue. The band did not sound compressed, but alive, with every instrument telling the story as originally intended. It was a missed opportunity in 2003 and rock and roll redemption in 2018. So past my making of BBC Sessions and The Song Remains the Same series, I'm ready to tackle the other live album, the one that was outsold by Robbie Williams live at Knebworth, and the one that lives in the shadow of the Zeppelin DVD, a live album that holds a fascinating story. Let's go back to 1972 for a traveling band cruising at full speed, unstoppable, relentless. This is a breakdown of the events and preparations for a live album taken from 2 nights in June. Also, I will answer many questions. Remember Jimmy Page's song Who's to Blame from Death Wish 2? We'll take a look at who's to blame for the album's 2003 sound and where does it stand in terms of record sales. Was there a bad energy in the 1972 recording? What is the possible explanation for its performance in the market and the reactions it got from Zeppelin fans? Oh yes, and I will provide a definite answer to the rumors of overdubs, edits, and cuts on the recordings. You're in for a rock and roll western. This is the making of Led Zeppelin, How the West Was Won.
With Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant is here, and I know you feel real good now.
Oh, it was really good last night. I think that this has been the convincing tour for me. Hello.
Is this Robert Plant?
Occasionally, yeah.
Oh, God, I want you to know that I'm having heart failure.
Oh, good God.
You have got to be the most fantastical, sexy man I have ever seen in my life. I was dying, literally, man. You were just standing up there, and I was, well, I'd say it, except we're on the radio.
Go on, say it.
No.
Yeah, take that attitude. He's here all the time. I'm not.
You're so sexy. It's unbelievable. Last night I was watching you through the binoculars, and I just want you to know that you are so sexy. It's unbelievable.
Hello.
How are you?
Is your honey dripping?
Oh, yeah.
How are you, anyway? Hi.
Hi, guess what? I think you're a fox.
A fox?
Yes, a fox.
What's that mean?
And he's a very good-looking man.
Saturday, June 24th, 1972. The Watergate incident was now 7 days old. Led Zeppelin enjoyed a day off at the famous Continental Hyatt in West Hollywood. John Bonham seemed to have a good time that day. Sources stated the band did some $1,700 in room damages. You know, rock and roll fun? Destroying paintings, soiling walls, submerging 4 stereos in bathtubs, and reportedly holding motorcycle races in the hallway. But despite their madness, they always paid for damages, no questions asked. They were gentlemen after all. The band played a Friday, June 23rd show at the venue we see in the Almost Famous movie. You know where William Miller goes to a Black Sabbath concert? The San Diego Sports Arena. The Zeppelin got great reviews and static crowd reactions, much in tune with many press reports of sold-out venues. There was ongoing proof these guys were to conquer everything, everyone, and everywhere. Photographs from this show are almost a carbon copy mood of what followed just 2 days later. Cymbals, wardrobe, and instruments in place. They were right in between success and exponential stardom, with the last visible traces of their early day tour stage of innocence and discovery. This is the point before they became the Houses of the Holy. San Diego was the final rehearsal before recording night was on. Bonzo was 24 years old and kept reaching new heights of drumming glory on his Ludwig Green Sparkle kit, a loyal companion into its second year of service since 1970. Rumor has it John said this was his favorite sounding kit. Can't blame him. It was an essential component of many career-defining shows that pushed Led Zeppelin well above their peers, thanks to Bonham's heavy-hand determination and manic grooving skills. It was a working man's kit. They said California residents would be worried with Bonzo's visits, as his bass drum alone could trigger the San Andreas fault on the intro for Dazed and Confused. John Paul Jones was 26, and his bass arsenal saw the inclusion of a new weapon besides his Fender jazz instrument of choice. It was a Fender 1951 style Telecaster inspired bass with the finish sanded off, which was used on selected numbers with an aggressive picking style. His multi-instrumentalist skills kept him busy with organ and keyboard duties as well, as his strong presence on the band's acoustic set, with Jones shining on electric mandolin, the only human on Earth capable of holding together Bonham's thunder, Jimmy's magic, and Robert's magnetism. Jonesy, the bringer of war, peace, and wisdom. Jimmy Page was 28, the oldest bandmate. He went through a physical transformation from a full beard in February to a clean-shaven May, followed by a medium-length haircut that he would never wear again for the rest of Zeppelin's career. But to make up for the strange haircut was the arrival of an iconic wardrobe piece that would change his guitar hero ways forever. The famous Matador rose jacket we see on the song Remains the Same made its on-stage appearance Thursday, June 22nd at the Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino, California. The outfit of destiny, it further unlocked a liquid lava flowing state of technique that had Page outgrown his blues roots into fusion. Robert Plant was still a month and a half away from turning 24, and by now, his 23-year-old voice showed signs of stress, touring strain, and life experiences that of a mythological character. Like I mentioned on my Making of Houses of the Holy episode 2, his once effortless high range started to crack in places as far back as August 1971. He remained a visually striking performer that got many women in the audience pregnant just by looking at them, but in reality, he faced a musical battle, looking for an urgent workaround to his loud screaming, yearning, and flair. Led Zeppelin's unquestionable popularity in the bootleg community had vinyl releases such as Live on Blueberry Hill, the go-to source for fans, as one of the closest approximations to their concert experience. Jimmy Page was unhappy with the multi-track recording audio quality of the Paris Theatre Show in 1971, nor their first Japanese visit that same year, scrapping off these as potential live albums. One of these Japanese shows remains one of the most popular bootlegs out there, including one of the latest editions, How the East Was Won. Why Jimmy hasn't released this officially keeps us Zeppelin fans awake at night. So with the enormous success of concert documents at the time such as Allman Brothers at Fillmore East, plus 171170 Elton John, Chicago Carnegie Hall, The Mothers at Fillmore East, The Nicest Elegy, Coliseum Live, please get this album. It's incredible. George Harrison's star-studded Concert for Bangladesh, Woodstock Part 2. I know what you're thinking. Hypnosis was inspired by this for Houses of the Holy, right? Maybe they were. The list keeps going with Grateful Dead 1971, James Gang live in concert, Paul Kossup's Free Live, and last but not least, Live Yardbirds featuring Jimmy Page. Yes, this was released back in 1971, featuring a 1968 concert. Page took legal action and the issuing label Epic stopped distribution immediately. He did the right thing. Epic took advantage of his Zeppelin fame and tried to play a Curtis Knight Jimi Hendrix move on Page, but he stopped it. The Eagles' debut, Pink Floyd's Obscured by Clouds, Lennon's Sometime in New York City, Alice Cooper's School's Out, best-selling album of 1972, Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits, Roxy Music's debut, David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust record, ELP's Trilogy, and Jethro Tull's Living in the Past. All these were released just before Led Zeppelin was scheduled to perform shows number 15 and 16 of the tour. The mobile truck was ready to capture these shows on tape. The streets of Los Angeles awaited them British rockers, living the lyrics for Going to California. "1972 remains one of the most exciting years for progressive rock, and the list of record releases up to June speak of inspiration further transforming the music industry into vital and explosive substances. Zeppelin wasn't left behind, but 1972 was a strange year for them. They say live albums should be recorded when bands are having a really good time, both on stage and off. Made in Japan had Deep Purple cashing in the success of Machine Head. Live at Leeds saw The Who profiting from Tommy, and Yes Songs was captured on the Close to the Edge tour, with Yes reigning supreme. My point is, not only is the musicianship important, but it's even better if synced with popularity and good or logical touring schedules. Where BBC sessions capture their early momentum UK splendor, and The Song Remains the Same celebrated their Olympic status of 1973, How the West Was Won had a different scenario. Their playing was not the problem, of course, but something else. Led Zeppelin released their career-changing Untitled on November 8, 1971, and while their previous 3 albums had long promotional tours, they only played 24 concerts by the time they arrived in North America in June. Oh yeah, and these 24 concerts took place in 5 countries: a fall-winter UK tour 1971, February 1972 visits to Australia and New Zealand. April and May was all about recording sessions for Houses of the Holy at 2 different locations, and 2 strangely placed warm-up shows were done May 27th and 28th at Netherlands and Belgium. They had to be tired and overworked, but they couldn't stop now. They had to top themselves at every show while dealing with the newfound responsibilities of becoming the band of Stairway to Heaven, leaving the somewhat shy, bearded traveling band vibes into exciting smoke and mirrors stardom trails. Zeppelin had no time to prepare for the new set of expectations and was in a sort of out of sync, out of phase touring schedule that seems to be made in a hurry not to lose momentum. Their chops were there, but mentally it was a troubled time to be in the moment. And maybe, just maybe, the concert recordings for How the West Was Won carried some of these emotions within. Their June 1972 North American schedule was insane. 17 shows that month with 13 days off. That's more than half their visit time on stage. We have 4 sets of 3 consecutive shows with just 1 day off. No wonder Robert Plant's voice was cracking by the time both recording nights for How the West Was Won took place. It also took a toll on Page, Jones, and Powerhouse drummer John Bonham. While they've done this before, they were entering uncharted waters of intent while new songs slowly crawled into their set. The North American tour of 1972 was their shortest at the time, with a shocking Madison Square Garden absence that year, where Elvis Presley managed to play 4 nights at this venue. Led Zeppelin's motivation on the road this time was not the same as before. Touring the States and Canada simultaneously to the Rolling Stones' 48-date concert series was tough. Despite Zeppelin's large ticket sales and hype, their North American trip was overshadowed by the Stones. The Rolling Stones were the hippest crowd in '72, and everybody wanted to hang out with them and their VIP entourage. While both bands played 2 sold-out shows at Seattle Center Coliseum, the Stones did 2 shows at Denver Coliseum and 2 shows at the LA Forum. Zeppelin only managed to score a single date for both. It was obvious Page, Plant, Jones, and Bonham were not happy, and manager Peter Grant took note of this by hiring a publicist and advertising agency for their next time around in '73. Despite their '72 beef with the Rolling Stones, they didn't take it personally, but musically and technologically. The band struck a deal with a new PA and sound company by the name of Shoko, and it was the dawn of a new era and many decibels up in the scale of badassery. Peter Grant decided to switch promoters in favor of Concerts West, who would now handle logistics and make their lives easier. Oh yeah, and give Led Zeppelin 90% of ticket sales. That's 90% of door money. They were now rock royalty. Overworked, yes, but rock royalty nevertheless. They had reasons to celebrate, and what better way than with plans for a live recording. Now, it's been the source of debate among Zeppelin fans that Seattle 1972 should have been captured instead of what it was, but we can't blame them for wanting to do this in Los Angeles, the city of night, the surroundings of LA Woman, West Coast folk, and West Coast blues. Shows 15 and 16 of the tour were selected. A mobile unit was chosen to record both shows at the Forum, Inglewood, and Long Beach Arena. Who did they call as live engineer? Well, Eddie Kramer, of course, in what was his second Zeppelin job that year after working the mobile unit at Stargroves for the Houses of the Holy sessions. To say Kramer knew the band's sound in 1972 is an understatement. Hendrix in the West, a posthumous live album, was released in January of 1972 with Eddie Kramer as producer. He was a perfect man for the job and one big step into the Zeppelin cinematic feature a year later in New York City. Sunday, June 25th, 1972. Led Zeppelin's 5th visit to the Forum since 1970. Now a band and Zepp fan favorite venue, it was one of the most important shows from the tour, LA Queens included. A busy year for the Forum with Chicago in February, Black Sabbath on March 15th, with special guest star Yes months away from releasing Close to the Edge. April had the McGovern benefit concert with Barbra Streisand's Portion released as live concert at the Forum in October 1972. More shows followed with Joe Cocker, Smokey Robinson, and Lee Michaels before the Rolling Stones played 2 nights on June 11th. Yeah, that's 2 shows the same day. Jethro Tull was next with 2 nights, June 23rd and 24th, promoting their Thick as a Brick material. Led Zeppelin was next. Their wardrobe selection for the LA Forum shows had Jones wearing a white dotted shirt, Page with his second ever use of the Matador jacket, John Bonham with a Showco shirt, which is the same look we see on the Australian 1972 footage, and a recording of Houses of the Holy at Stargroves. Robert Plant made a historic debut of the famous blue jacket he would be long associated with. It's the one we see on The Song Remains the Same. Led Zeppelin looked apart and walked closer to the definite versions we all know. Because all 3 symbols from Untitled can be seen on stage, this is considered to be the 4th album tour. Led Zeppelin's 22 number set for June 25th was 3 hours long. Let's take a look at the set list. Opening track, LA Drone, was a pre-recorded piece of music run through the PA system. For many years I believed it was Page and Jones working out feedback and delay effects, but no, it was pre-recorded. The tape had a drone sound in F sharp, and while you'd think it was played at every show in June, it actually made its debut at Nassau Coliseum on the 15th, and was then reprised at both Seattle June 18th and San Bernardino June 22nd. The idea for LA Drone was to create tension just before the band went into Immigrant Song. Remember Jimmy and Robert's trip to India back in February? Well, it seems the audio piece was extracted from an Indian broadcasting radio theme at the time. Check it out. Now, when was the Zeppelin LA Drone tape made? The band was reported to have visited Electric Lady Studios in New York City in the middle of their tour to mix some of the stuff from Houses of the Holy. Based on their touring schedule, the closest venue to Electric Lady Studios was Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale, which may explain why LA Drone made its live debut there. News reports in July also stated the band's next album, quote, might well be a double one, with tapes from live shows on the West Coast. And just for fun, you can check my episode on Houses of the Holy being a double album here on the channel. So past LA Drone, the band comes in with a smash hit Attack via Immigrant Song, which remained the band's opener since June 1970, but it had its days numbered out of Robert Plant's difficulty to reach the high notes. It would only be done 12 more times that year, mostly as an encore. Jimmy's terrific guitar solo here borrowed some melodic lines from the Yardbirds' 1965 track, Mr. You're a Better Man Than I, recorded by his friend Jeff Beck. Heartbreaker kept a high voltage action going with Jimmy's solo of Pure E in A minor and a quick nod to Simon and Garfunkel's Feeling Groovy. Still unreleased, Over the Hills and Far Away was next, with its second ever performance and Robert reaching the high notes. Interesting to note the guitar solo section had the same harmony and feel to Immigrant Song, which seemed like a good replacement for the guitar solo as months went by. A double feature of Black Dog and Since I've Been Loving You gave the crowd everything they wanted and more. Now you can tell the band was still trying to find the right setlist pace after the success of Untitled, thus why Stairway to Heaven was still a bit early in the set, something quite inconceivable past November 1972. A 4-song acoustic set was next, with Robert Plant adding more of his famous plantations or comments in between numbers. You really missed this stuff on the official release. Tangerine was one of the songs that didn't make the live album cut, and it was played on 11 dates from the tour. Definitely a Zeppelin 3 highlight that should have been on the album despite being a Page and Plant duet kind of thing.
Why don't you stop shouting, brother?
far, I mean, I've been in strange places, and we've been known to play for 12 and a half hours.
Dazed and Confused carried the news back to Electric Mysteries and Trails. The song had changed a bit since their last visit to the Forum in August 1971. As you can see, they added a Houses of the Holy outtake, Walter's Walk, with a guitar riff portion that was later used for Hot Sun for Nowhere on Presence. But it didn't stop there. Another Houses of the Holy number, The Crunge, was also thrown in there, mostly as an instrumental, with brief ad-libs by Robert Plant. An exquisite funk venture, it was kept in Dazed and Confused through the rest of the year, and makes you appreciate the studio cut much more. An oddly placed song, but a hard-hitting track, What Is and What Should Never Be was next. The 1969 number was a regular throughout 1972, but said goodbye past their North American run, only to come back twice in early 1973. Another Houses of the Holy number, Dancing Days, made its second ever appearance with a guitar tuning of DG, DG, BD. Robert Plant made a historic remark before the song, where he talked about the band's fifth album.
The song of the new album, and it's not going to be called Led Zeppelin. How many have we done so far? It's not going to be called Led Zeppelin 5. It's got every possibility of being called Burn That Candle. Second vocalist is about to do his little thing. Our percussionist, the very regular John Charlie Bonham, Moby Dick.
Past John Bonham's almost 20-minute drum solo that shook Los Angeles to its rhythmic core, Led Zeppelin jumped into Whole Lotta Love. It was a shorter version than the 26-minute version from their Forum 1971 visit, featuring a revamped medley section comprised of Elvis's version of Let's Have a Party, Ricky Nelson's take on Hello Mary Lou, Elvis once again with Heartbreak Hotel, the Beatles version of Slow Down, and Howlin' Wolf's Going Down Slow. A fast-paced rock and roll sent the show into encore modes, but it was still far from over. The Ocean was played for the third time ever, a great showcase number, and this is Robert Plant's original introduction that was cut from the official release. It seems Plant was letting an audience member know he had to cool down his evil ways. Next we have Jumple Jones showcasing his tasteful organ skills. The sound, the phrasing, and sheer power of these numbers speaks for itself. To have Led Zeppelin do Louie Louie is pure magic. Thank You remains another tragic omission from the official live release. The band came back for 2 more songs, Communication Breakdown, which was cut from How the West Was Won, and a superb rendition of Bringing It Home in full 1969 mode. The interplay between Page and Bonham here is ridiculously good. This was the 3rd and final time on tour they performed this number. Concert reviews for June 25th were positive. Not a bad thing to say about an almost perfect show where both the band and audience joined forces as a single rock and roll statement. Critics mentioned how Zeppelin had no supporting act and how their 3-hour show exceeded the Rolling Stones' second night at the Forum. Tuesday, June 27th, 1972. Wardrobe for the evening was pretty much the same as the Forum, except for Jumble Jones wearing a trees pattern long sleeve 60s shirt, which he reprised from Nassau Coliseum on June 15th. John Bonham wore a black tank top, ready to destroy his kit, or just imagine the face of his enemies, on the snare drum, and take revenge. The band headed out for their first ever show at Long Beach Arena, which makes you wonder why didn't they do a second night at the Forum instead. Long Beach Arena was quite busy that year. A 3-bill show of Deep Purple, Buddy Miles and Uriah Heep in January, Allman Brothers on March 5th, a match made in progressive rock heaven, ELP and Mahavishnu Orchestra on March 22nd, and the Rolling Stones with opening act Stevie Wonder on June 10th. Led Zeppelin's June 27th show was pretty much a carbon copy setlist of the Forum, with just a single encore in the ways of rock and roll. Holy Love featured a special medley edition of Blueberry Hill for the first time since 1970, and of course that's the name of their famous bootleg recorded at the Forum. This performance on the 27th provided strong second takes for Page's post-production duties later on, or should we say, decades later. Long Beach Arena shows the band much more relaxed and focused. Their 1972 level was just off the charts in consistency. Past their Long Beach performance, they were just 1 show away from finishing their successful return to North America in Arizona the next day, June 28th. So why weren't the California shows officially released back in the 70s? So Led Zeppelin took a break from touring until October, when they came back to Japan, and their setlist included 2 new songs from Houses of the Holy. Game changer anthems for the band, The Song Remains the Same, and The Rain Song. Why Led Zeppelin didn't record these shows in Japan 1972 is a mystery. They deserve a higher praise than they get. 2 Switzerland dates and a UK tour followed in late 1972, making the June recording somewhat dated as Led Zeppelin kept evolving as an instrumental unit and Robert Plant's voice morphed into controlled but limited high-range ability. The biggest problem with a Led Zeppelin live album at the time was how quickly it lost relevance to their most recent onstage version. Adding the December 1972 release of Deep Purple's quintessential record and collector's item made in Japan, and the stakes were risen, turning the live album into more than just a contractual obligation or special import, but a product worth promoting worldwide. Recording efforts were made in early January 1973, nowadays their famous Southampton bootleg, until they finally played their famous 3 nights at Madison Square Garden, which took almost 3 years to turn out into an official release. There was no way the June 1972 shows stood a chance against a setlist with no quarter, and quite possibly their most progressive rock take on Dazed and Confused. You can check my 4-part making of series for The Song Remains the Same here on the channel. Then came the latter-day tragedies of the Swan Song years, and the band broke up in 1980 with no plans to release a live album on the horizon. Fast forward late 80s and early 90s to the June 25th, 1972 gig at the Forum, released as a bootleg, Burn Like a Candle. The title was taken from one of Robert Plant's comments at the show, and it became a very popular recording amongst Zeppelin fans and collectors. But despite its praise, it wasn't on Jimmy Page's radar, with BBC Sessions released in 1997. There were no plans for a new Zeppelin release past latter days in the year 2000, until the surviving members looked to the West for some lost recordings. Stay tuned for episode 2, as we'll go deep into how the West was won and how it was actually put together, plus the truth behind the cuts and edits behind it, as well as fun facts and production design secrets. You don't want to miss it. This is how the album was actually made, and it completes the puzzle for Zeppelin fans only. Be sure to hit the like button as well as the notification bell so you know when part 2 arrives. This 1972 story continues. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.